My name is Grant Taylor. I was born in a medium-sized Midwestern city and grew up as an only child in a typical all-American family. This is my story. In high school, I was an athlete on the varsity team handball squad. It's not a widely popular sport across the country, but in my hometown, it had a dedicated following thanks to our coach, a passionate man from Eastern Europe who introduced it to our school. I was a decent athlete, tall and lean. But, honestly, I was drawn to team handball for one main reason. The girls. The girls' team practiced on the court right next to ours, and they were beautiful. I suspect our coach knew exactly what he was doing by scheduling practices side by side. It was a clever way to attract some of the school's best athletes to the team. Quite the honey trap, you could say. With that kind of motivation, I practiced hard and eventually became the top scorer on the team. A girl in my grade named Clara Bennett was on the girls' team. She was a beautiful, tall, blonde girl with stunning gray eyes. Clara and I became friends during our senior year of high school. Clara was excellent in math and I was good with computers, so we had some things in common besides team handball. She found me handsome and funny, and we became an item. We lost our virginity with each other the summer after graduating from high school. We were lovers all summer, but after some weeks Clara told me that because we would be going to college in different states it would be better for us to break up, rather than try to maintain a long-distance relationship. I was upset at the time, and we broke up then and there. I was single for the last month of summer. It was after my breakup with Clara that my neighbor, Evan Delgado, hired me to help him build a swimming pool in his backyard. He offered me some cash and the free use of his swimming pool after we completed it. I needed some money to get my old car fixed, so it worked out perfectly. Evan took a couple of weeks off work, and I helped him build the pool. His wife, Diane, would always bring us something to drink while we worked and would prepare lunch for us. I would always ask for low-fat milk rather than soft drinks or beer. The first time I requested this, she looked at me a little funny, but brought me milk. We finished the pool in less than 2 weeks, and Evan paid me more than promised. After we were done, he went back to work. I found myself at his swimming pool a lot for the rest of the summer. Evan and Diane had 2 younger sons, aged 6 and 8. I liked the 2 boys and I played a lot with them out at the pool. Diane liked that I entertained her sons. I used the swimming pool nearly every day in August, and I began to notice Diane frequently looking at me with some interest. I have to admit that I looked at her with some interest too. She was a stunning 29-year-old woman with a captivating figure and long, graceful legs. I especially liked when she was in her bikini and would hang out in the pool with us. She was originally from Eastern Europe, and her mesmerizing accent always had a way of making my heart race. One day, I was at the pool and was getting ready to leave. The boys were in their rooms playing video games. I mentioned to Diane that I had to get some stuff for my college dorm. She told me that she knew of all kinds of sales and would help me with my shopping. She told me to go with her the next day, that her sons would be busy with sports, so we could have the whole day to spend together. She walked up to me confidently, gently placing her hand on my chest and tracing a finger down my face. Leaning in close, she whispered softly in my ear, "You know, Grant, in my home country, there's an expression. It translates to, different gyms train the body better." Surprised, I stumbled over my words and managed to ask, "What does that mean?" "It means, Grant," she said as she slowly pulled away to look me in the eyes with a look that said I was a piece of meat and she was a starving dog, that a different lover would be most exciting for me. I was frozen in place. "I'll see you tomorrow, Grant," she said with a twinkle in her eye. I stumbled home in a lustful daze. I told my dad that I want to go with Diane to shop for college supplies. My dad's brain worked quickly and got the whole story from me with a little prompting. He told me to consider that if I had an affair with Diane, she could lose her husband. He asked me if Evan divorced Diane, would I leave college and marry Diane and raise her children? I told him that I didn't love her and didn't want to marry her. He told me to consider that while Evan was a nice guy, he was also a big, strong man and would not stand for me sleeping with his wife. He told me to consider that Evan was a man and would likely beat me if he found out that I had screwed his wife. He told me that while he and Mom would visit me in the hospital if I survived, but they wouldn't feel too badly for what would happen to me if Evan got a hold of me. That gave me another pause for thought. He also informed me that if Evan beat the hell out of me, he would go to prison. If that happened, would I leave college and would I help Diane and her children? By the end of our talk, I felt embarrassed. My dad persuaded me and I canceled this adventure with Diane. I guess I had never thought of adultery before my talk with my dad, but he gave me a lot to think about. I realized that adultery was not something to condone or engage in. Everybody loses. Needless to say, I didn't go over to Evan and Diane's pool anymore after that, and I did not speak to Diane for a long time. I went to college and I lived the usual student life. I dated several girls and even slept with a few, but I did not find the one. I was not too wild, but I partied some and drank my share of beers. Interestingly, except for at parties, milk remained my drink of choice. After graduation, I came home. I got a job at a medium-sized firm, working in the IT department. Not long after I started, I happened to run into Clara. She told me she had been hired to teach math at a local high school. She was single, I was single, so we began to date. Soon, we were in love. A few months into our renewed relationship, she became pregnant. I asked her to be my wife. I was going to anyway, honest, and she accepted my proposal. We were married shortly thereafter and settled into a happy married life. Our son was born 4 months after our marriage. Our daughter was born 2 years later. Clara stayed at home with our children. We planned for her to do that until they were both of school age, at least. Our sex life was probably similar to that of most young married couples with small children, 3 to 4 times weekly, down from our bunny-like habits before our son was born. My mom's parents had died and left me with a little money. I was their only grandchild, which I used for a down payment on a nice suburban house. That windfall, plus my pretty good salary, allowed us to live comfortably with just me working. However, we didn't do too many extravagant things. Our typical recreation and holidays were spent with my family or Clara's family. My dad's parents lived in an old farmhouse on a lake about 50 miles from us, and we would visit them a lot. They had a big, empty house and loved to have us visit. We would fish, play in the water, and just have a great time as a family. My granddad was a hunter and I went with him to hunt frequently. We brought home the game and my grandma and my wife cooked them. My dad was always more of a fisherman, so hunting was a thing my granddad and I shared together, just the two of us. My dad had the habit of taking my son out fishing, so maybe that would be a special granddad and grandson tradition for the two of them someday. My granddad liked hunting with shotgun for birds. Once he told me on a hunting trip that he had once put the fear of God into a guy who was making unwanted advances on grandma by changing the buckshot from a shell and replacing it with fine salt. Apparently, hitting a guy with that would give a good dose of pain for days. Plus, it would scare the shit out of whoever was on the receiving end. He died when the kids were still small, and Grandma moved to our city. We kept the old farmhouse, and my father kept the weapons and the cartridges. My wife was adamant about not wanting them in our house with the kids and all. Sometimes all the logic in the world cannot sway a woman's opinion, so it's just not worth the fight. When I wanted to go up hunting to my grandparents' property, I would just stop over at my parents' house and grab the guns. During the summers, we often would go to my parents' or Clara's parents' house for the day. Frequently when we did, we would go over to Evan and Diane's pool. They liked our children same as I had liked their children earlier. It had been some years since Diane's indecent proposal to me, so there was no weirdness between us. In fact, she seemed like the model wife and mother. I chalked her behavior with me up as a one-time thing. In fact, Diane became like a true aunt for our children. I had been working at my employers for a little over 8 years, having been promoted to project leader, when my boss got permission from the CEO and the owners to build a central IT system. Long story short, the opportunity was great for our company, and my career in particular. It involved many months of long hours. I worked late most evenings for the better part of the year, but thankfully we only worked 1 or 2 weekends a month. It was a stress on my relationship with my wife and kids, but I was doing it for my family. 6 or 7 months into the project, I was sent out of town for 2 weeks to work with another division. While there, I worked closely with another department head, and Doherty. She was an impressive 30-something brunette with a sharp mind and a strong presence. She was married and she had a son and a daughter, like me. I was acquainted with her from my early days with my employer, when she worked at the same office. We had always gotten on well back then, and it was nice to see her again. We worked with each other closely for most of those 2 weeks, and we just clicked. There was a definite chemistry there. I worked with her, or her colleagues, all day into the evening, and joined me for dinner and drinks several times, catching up with each other, discussing old acquaintances, and just keeping each other company. It appears she had been very busy for the last few months as well, and knew that she would be putting in long hours while I was in town with my team. She explained that her husband was gone for a week with their kids, visiting his parents out of town while she was busy with the project. I couldn't help but notice that and got increasingly flirtatious with me as the weeks went on. I also noticed that she wore sexy perfume and had a habit of unbuttoning her blouse and leaning into me at every opportunity. I had been out of the game for a while, but I knew the signals and wanted me. No doubt about it, I was tempted, especially given that my sexual needs had suffered for the last few months, and the wife was a couple of states away, and I were the last 2 working on the Friday before my departure on Saturday. She insisted we go out, just the 2 of us, for one last night of dinner. When I met her at the hotel bar, my jaw dropped. She was dressed to the nines. Tiny little black dress with a deep V-neck showing all kinds of firm, ripe cleavage. Her sky-high heels showed her legs to the best possible advantage. Her skirt knee-length with a slit that showed her entire left leg when she took a stride. I ordered her a drink and asked her where she wanted to go for dinner. She told me with quiet, seductive voice, "How about we go to your room and order in?" I stammered something completely unintelligible, and she continued, "Don't be shy, Grant. We've been building to this for 2 weeks, and you know it. Tonight's the night. My husband is out of town. Your wife is a million miles away, and it's just you and me. Just tonight. Just this once." I looked at her in awe. I had never been tempted in my life. If I am being honest, I was probably never so turned on. It was as if a pheromone cloud enveloped me. I felt dizzy. I knew, somewhere deep inside, that this would happen that night. But nothing prepared me for the reality of the seduction. I gazed at her, those eyes, those lips, and then she kissed me, a soul-searing kiss, and I kissed her back. God help me, but I wanted her as much as I've ever wanted a woman in my entire life. And we were alone in a sea of nothingness. I drove home from the airport in autopilot mode. I had survived the test. Before my will had been broken, the kiss was, and I had pulled away. Deep inside, I found the strength to resist and reject what every fiber of my body was desperate to take. I felt amazement that I had come so close to the precipice, but a certain pride in not falling into the abyss. I felt as if I had awoken from a comatose state, and had sparked a level of attraction in me that I had never felt before, and hadn't taken it very well, calling me a pathetic loser or something like that. But I just smiled, nodded, wished her a good night, and returned to my room, alone. When I returned home to my family, I couldn't hug and kiss them enough. I think I took them all by surprise at my reaction, but I was honestly the happiest I had been in the longest time. I had long, passionate, tender sex with Clara Saturday and Sunday nights when the children slept. She was pleased with me, and we renewed our vows of love for each other that weekend. I resolved to take more care to prioritize my wife and children, even if I had to work mad hours. I returned to work on Monday, made my reports to the bosses for my 2 weeks away, caught up on my correspondence, and left at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. Clara was again surprised by my early arrival. I joined her at our son's handball game, seeing him for the first time that season, chatting with other parents, and having a good time with my family. We went out for pizza afterwards. That night, I made love to my wife for the 3rd night in a row. For the first time in over a year, I am sure. "Wow," she said, wiping the sweat from her brow after our 2nd round of lovemaking. "If I didn't miss you so much when you were gone, I would suggest that you go away for 2 weeks more often. I just realized how important you are to me," I said, "and I wanted to show you just how much I love you. And I'm sorry if I haven't been showing you that enough these last months. Baby, I know you're doing this for us, but it means a lot when you show me how much you care like this. Now, let me show you just how much I love you," she said as she moved closer, holding me in a warm embrace. A 3rd round of passionate sex followed, another first in a long time for us, and called me several days later. She was coy and non-committal, but I got the sense that she wanted to see if I was having any second thoughts about not taking her up on her offer. I told her politely but firmly that I didn't regret my decision to turn her down, and that I would not cheat on my wife. She apologized for her forward behavior. I told her not to worry about it, and I assured her that I would be discreet. She expressed gratitude for that, and then sounded embarrassed by the whole episode. I told her she would have seduced me if I had been a bachelor, that it was a compliment her that I had had such a hard time refusing her advances. She cried a little and told me that her husband neglected her, and that she had strong suspicions that he might have a mistress. She told me that she had not cheated on him before, but that she liked me, was attracted to me, and thought I was the perfect person with whom to seek a little attention, affection, and reinforcement of her own attractiveness. I told her that I appreciated that. I told her that I didn't want to get mixed up in her relationship, but I wished her well. A few months later, I was again sent to Anne's outstate office for a week of meeting. Again, I worked long days and evenings with Anna and her team during the testing period. Anna was very proper to me, but I did notice that she seemed to have a very close connection with a young male colleague of hers, Jeff something. One evening at the office, I went to the restroom in the nearly empty building. When I returned, I saw Jeff talking closely to Anna, his hand on her back as he whispered something to her. Anna noticed me standing in the doorway and gently pulled away from him, shrugging it off. She had the good grace to look a little embarrassed, and I had the good grace to remain silent about them. I was pleased Anna was not my wife. A couple months later, our big project was wrapping up successfully, and I had a promotion and raise coming. That made me happy, but I was happier that I would be able to get back to a more normal schedule. The boss sent me and a couple of members of my team to a week-long IT training seminar in Jacksonville, Florida. I've never, before or since, seen so many attractive women with such huge tits per capita in all my life as I did in Northeast Florida. Amazing, really. I met with many people from different companies. One night, I was in the bar of the hotel, where the seminar was held. I was the youngest one at the table, only 29 years old. When I revealed that, one of the guys at the table asked if the first round of divorces was hitting my friends yet. I asked him what he meant. He informed me that, these days, everyone gets married in their young to mid-20s, and the divorces started in the late 20s and early 30s. The others at the table nodded and snickered. One of the guys at the table, an elder fellow in his mid-50s, told us he had been married twice and he was successful in his second divorce. I asked him what he meant. He said that he was burned by his first divorce, so prepared for the second one just in case. He told us that he hid a little money from his second wife very carefully, so as not to be discovered in the event of divorce. I questioned his honesty, and he informed me that his second wife wasn't too honest when he caught her cheating on him with the pool boy. In any event, his thinking was that, if the marriage had been successful, he would have had a secret reserve for emergency and extra money for the grandchildren. But, since his wife was a cheating 304, instead he managed to have a secret restart fund after the smoke had cleared after his divorce. He apparently had managed to squirrel away well in excess of $100,000 that his wife never discovered. He had a head start on restarting his life after his second divorce. Good for him. Everyone else at the table seemed to have a divorce nightmare story, or had several friends who had been through the ringer. It was an eye-opener for me. While I loved and trusted my wife, I started to think that this secret fund idea was a pretty smart move. If nothing else, it could be a nice little secret college fund for the kids, or a nice retirement fund to surprise my wife with 30 or 35 years down the road. From that day on, I started a secret fund, depositing small cash withdrawals every week and requesting any and all bonuses to be issued separately into separate retirement accounts. All in all, it equaled maybe 5% of my gross earnings. Enough to matter, not enough to be too noticeable. Life went on. The kids grew, Clara and I prospered, and I was a happy man. 3 years later at a company event I ran into, and again, she told me that Jeff, the single colleague, had been her lover those few years ago, but that he had left for California and she had not any lover since then. Her marriage is good now, and her husband Jim, and she rebuilt their marriage for their children. We were alone at the table, and the loud music allowed us to talk with some privacy. So I was a little cheeky and asked her about how it all came about, and her honesty took me by surprise. How did you reconcile with your husband? This is interesting, because I caught him cheating. Jim has a construction firm, and one of his woman colleagues was his mistress. I confronted him with my knowledge and demanded that he stop. Of course, I didn't bother to tell him I had cheated on him, too. So you were the engine for the reconciliation, were you? Yes, I suppose I was. After I confronted him, he broke it off with her, and he asked me to forgive him. I told him I would try, but that we needed to go to marriage counseling. This was my best idea, but you were never honest with him? True, but he was a worse cheater than me. We worked with the counselor for a few months, couples counseling and individual sessions, too. We addressed our underlying problems, which were more serious than the cheating itself. So, no, I didn't ever fess up completely, but I didn't see a reason for it. And I didn't beat him up about his cheating too much, either. I just wanted to fix us at that point. I guess sinners can forgive each other easier. I observed, and looked at me speculatively, then said, exactly. The counselor was smart, and he guessed that I had cheated, too. We talked about it during my individual sessions, but he kept my secret from Jim. He agreed that my cheating was about self-image and acceptance. Maybe even revenge, but my infidelity wasn't the problem with our relationship. Lack of care and attention and intimacy with each other was the problem. Besides communication and prioritizing our time together, he also recommended an interesting sex practice, which helped to save our marriage. Really? That is interesting, I prompted. You see, this is kind of embarrassing to talk about, but I trust you. Part of our reestablishing our intimacy and emotional connection involved a very primal physical connection. What could be more primal than sex between a man and a woman? I asked, and said, a little red-faced, well, the marriage counselor recommended more sex for us. I was glad that Ann and Jim had reconciled. I was not sure I ever could in either of their shoes, but to each their own. If they were happier now, then I was happy for them. It wasn't until our daughter Sophie was 10 years old and my son Keith was 12 that Clara finally went back to teaching math in a high school. She took a couple of refresher courses that summer, but was able to pretty much jump right back in. She was really gifted when it came to math. Our kids took after her in that way. In fact, they were both excellent students. Like Clara and I, they were also tall and good athletes. They, too, became team handball players. I was very proud of my kids. Clara really threw herself into her work. I suppose with the kids getting older and needing her less, she was looking for another outlet. In addition to teaching high school math, she volunteered to be the coach of the school's math team. As such, she met with and trained several skilled students weekly, twice extra 2 hours of teaching after school. She received a small stipend for her work, but it wasn't about the money. She trained them for student math competitions. Under her tutelage, the team did extracurricular well. As a team, they placed third in state the first year. The next year, they placed second and qualified for the national competition. She traveled with the students to Pennsylvania for the competition. One of her students, a shy gangly kid named Rob, was among the best 10 mathematics students in the national competition, and he ultimately got full academic scholarship to Caltech. Clara was particularly proud of him, as he was talented, but never really gave math his full effort until she chose him for the math team. For the 2 years he was on the team, she put in extra time and effort with him. Their hard work and dedication paid off. I was proud of Clara's accomplishments. Life was good. By this time, I was 37 years old. I was successful and happy in my work and family. I still went out and hunted from time to time, and we still went out to my grandparents' property as a family to fish and play in the water. We still visited our parents frequently and still spent time in Evan and Diane's pool. Life was good. Sure, my sex life with Clara had slowed down some. We weren't kids in our 20s any longer, but we still had a pretty good, if rather familiar, love life. I still loved her with all my heart, and we still had fun together when we could find the time. Her returning to work decreased our time together. She was often busy with the math team, or with grading homework, quizzes, and tests. No multiple choice questions in her classes. She was a show-you-work kind of teacher. But I couldn't begrudge her teaching career. It clearly gave her a great deal of satisfaction. In any event, my responsibilities had increased at work as well, and I was putting in plenty of hours of my own. Still, I did find myself with more alone time than I had been used to, with the kids busy with their own activities. They were 15 and 13, respectively, and Clara busy with her work. I've always been a fan of fiction, and I started exploring various online story websites. While I enjoyed science fiction and adventure short stories, I also came across some adult-themed sites. I became particularly interested in stories about infidelity, not the explicit fantasy ones, but the dramatic narratives about cheating spouses. To be honest, it became a bit of an obsession. Every day, I'd browse through new submissions, seeking tales of love, betrayal, and loss. I found myself captivated by the stories of revenge against unfaithful partners, and I couldn't help but root for the betrayed spouses as they rebuilt their lives. Although my own marriage was strong, I'd seen enough of my friends experience the turmoil of divorce to understand their pain. I have to admit that reading these stories got to me. I suppose reading too much of that stuff will put crazy ideas in your head. It did to me anyway. Although I trusted my wife, I did get niggling suspicions. Telling myself I was doing it as a lark, I even secretly checked the DNA of my children. They were mine. All right. Still, my suspicions did not totally subside. I read more and I began to think about bugs and web cameras for secret surveillance. I bought these instruments for my secret accounts. Yes, I was still maintaining those. And these electric gadgets I connected to a dedicated personal server at my office. Schools were out for summer. Keith and Sophie went away to summer camps at the same time. Clara was at home almost all day. I assembled the bugs and the web cameras in our house and activated the recordings. I checked the activity for a few days, discovering nothing out of the ordinary, and I began to feel like a creep. Why was I doing this? Why was I invading my wife's privacy? Because of paranoia from reading a bunch of silly stories? I stopped my madness and forgot about the surveillance. It was about this time that a pretty big project landed on my desk. I was really busy for a couple of weeks. After we finally finished the project, I was back in my office, pushing papers and screwing around with my electronic files. I was reminded of my surveillance project. I intended to dismantle the entire insane operation, but decided to give a few of the files a quick look for the hell of it. I looked at them, and I almost fell off my chair in surprise. It was literally the first tape I watched. My loving wife had a lover, the recent high school graduate math team star and soon-to-be Caltech scholarship student. The little a-hole apparently lost his virginity to my cheating wife. It was a whole seduction routine, with my wife as his sex teacher. It was not lost on me that this was a lot like the Diane episode from my own younger days, except this a-hole actually screwed my wife. I reviewed a couple more surveillance videos. Sure enough, they had sex multiple times in my house while my kids were away at camp. I didn't bother listening to everything, but it seemed clear that my wife had taken quite an interest as little Rob, and not just in his brain. It appeared that my wife was taking her tutoring to the next level. It was clear that she intended to be done with him after their 2-week-long tryst, but it was no mistake. I was enraged. My first idea was to kill them, but let myself calm a little and realize that I didn't want to land in prison. Plus, I wasn't a murderer, and I couldn't do that to my kids. My next idea was to figure out a way to set up my wife and send her to prison for a few years, maybe one in Southeast Asia. Clearly, I had to give this whole situation some thought. I instructed my secretary to hold all my calls, cancel all my appointments for the day, and allow no one to disturb me. I closed the door and I examined the voice files carefully. If the cheating affair started while Rob Boy was still in high school, I could get my wife fired, maybe even arrested. But it appeared that their brief affair only commenced during that 2-week period after his graduation. So, maybe no criminal charges and no guaranteed firing, but I could be a vindictive a-hole and present my wife as a cheating 304 teacher to our community. Best case scenario, public humiliation for her, and maybe she would lose her job and teaching license. But I didn't want to humiliate my kids. They didn't deserve to be collateral damage in all of this. Same with her parents. They had always been good to me. I listened to the last few recordings more carefully. They were planning a last meeting. A meeting for tomorrow. Damn them. Thoughts of mayhem again entered my imagination. I calmed myself with the greatest exertion of willpower. Even though I didn't want to go public with the videos of my wife's affair, I considered that she wouldn't know that. Therefore, I could possibly blackmail my soon-to-be ex-wife and obtain the best divorce terms possibly. That would give me some satisfaction and justice. But Rob needed to be taught a lesson, as well. I recalled my granddad's solution to a predator all those years ago. I took the rest of the day off and contacted a top divorce lawyer. I got an appointment for the next day and took the next 2 days off work. I went to my parents and I told them what I had found out. A little while later, my father found me down in the basement with granddad's old shotguns. He expressed alarm, but I explained my intended revenge. In the end, he helped to change the lead buckshot to fine salt crystal and some cartridges. I also took along one of my granddad's old pistols. I called my cheating wife and told her that I had to go out of town that night for a work emergency and that I would be back in 2 days. She seemed pleased enough with my plans. The bitch. That night, I considered my options in a calmer state of mind. Could I reconcile with my wife? Should I try? It seemed like it was a one-time, short affair. She didn't love the kid, but they were clearly close. Still, it wasn't like she wanted to run away with him. And I watched the tapes. He wasn't anything special in bed. In fact, he screwed like one would expect from an 18-year-old virgin. Sloppy, quick, and overeager. My wife spent time with him occasionally, but it always seemed like an extension of the mentoring she had been doing for him, helping him in ways that were both personal and professional. No excuse, but it didn't seem to be about love or a desire for sexual satisfaction that she was missing with me. Thing was, this was no one-time slip. It was premeditated. It was intentional. It was a sign of her disrespect for me and our marriage. I couldn't live with that. I couldn't remain married to this woman. This woman that I had loved for so long. She just screwed everything up. Maybe I wasn't as good a person as Anne. I just couldn't forgive and forget. Ever. I had to move on, and I had to have my revenge. Since killing a cheating wife and her lover wasn't considered socially acceptable, I would have to get my pound of flesh in some other way. These thoughts swirled in my head until I finally fell asleep. My children are so old they could come to me freely, and I could meet them a lot. The next day I went to the lawyer and we discussed about my possibilities. Since we had no prenuptial agreement, all marital assets would be divided in 50 to 50%. Since my inheritance paid for our down payment, I would most likely be entitled to a greater share of the proceeds from the sale of the house. He told me that the children were old enough so that their wishes would be factored into the physical custody arrangement, but that their mother had been the primary caretaker for most of their lives, so she was more likely to get primary physical custody. He told me that there was a chance of 50 to 50 physical custody as well, but only if the parties agreed. The lawyer told me that the house would remain intact until the youngest child became 18 years old, and we could sell it and share 50 to 50%, less my down payment. Although she had a full-time teaching job, I made significantly more money than Clara, and I had a lot more in my retirement accounts than she had. My lawyer told me I would likely have to pay her alimony for some time, and child support as well, unless I had primary physical custody. I told him that I wanted divorce and that I would get her to agree to my terms. He said that all documents would be ready in a week. I thought my children would come home before this. I went to the banks and organized our bank interest for the divorce proceedings. I checked the time. It was time for my early return. I parked my car down the block from our house and took my bag of weapons and walked to my home. I entered the house silently through the back door. The coast was clear. I crept upstairs to the master bedroom. I burst into the bedroom and I shot the cheaters who were going at it. I shot both salt cartridges into them. They literally flew off the bed, howling in pain and fear. I admired my handiwork for a few moments. When the two cheaters realized that they were not seriously wounded, though in great pain, I threw the empty shotgun to the floor and cleared my throat. They froze, staring at me with grimaces of pain etched on their faces. I stared at them with a look of contempt on my face. I slowly, deliberately took the pistol out of my jacket pocket. Then, I let a look of rage break out over my face. "I'll kill you," I shouted. The young lover boy and my cheating wife screamed in fear. My wife and Rob pissed themselves from fear of death. I aimed the pistol at young Rob. My cheating wife moaned with voice filled with pain. "Don't kill him." Ignoring her pleas, I moved to him deliberately. He closed his eyes and cowered. I kicked the balls and body of the wallowing a-hole. My rage was not feigned. It felt good. Seeing him rolling on the floor in agony, tears on his face, with a butt cheek full of fine salt buckshot satisfied my sense of vengeance. I regained my composure again. I have given up on this marriage, but I wanted to leave a little reminder for the two cheaters. I waited for him to recover a bit. Clara was on the floor, clutching a bed sheet to her chest, a look of fear and confusion written all over her face. She remained silent. Once he was back to breathing steadily, I again lowered the pistol to his head and said, "You little a-hole, you will learn to stay away from my wife." Rob moaned from pain and pleaded for his life. "Don't kill me." "Why not? It's that or you give up Caltech. If I let you live, are you willing to give up college and take care of my wife when I divorce the bitch?" The moaning young lover boy wanted to play the knight with shining armor. "Yes, I'll give that up. I'll support her." I shook my head with pity. "Then you are totally stupid. You are a stupid boy if you would give up your academic future for a 304 almost 20 years older than you." I paused. "I'm not going to kill you, moron. I'm not going to kill either are you. She's a 304 and you're a stupid kid. Neither of you are worth it," I sighed. The air was full of relief, because they understood I would not kill them, but they weltered in their own piss from their pain and, I would hope, their shame. I turned back to Rob and told him with a cold voice, "But, if I will see you near to my wife again, I will kill you. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I do." My cheating wife moaned from the pain in the background and she cried. I continued, "Listen, Rob, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to say anything to anyone about what happened here today. Got it? You will get out of town for good by the end of the week. I don't care where you go, but you will go, and you will stay gone, for the rest of the summer. Maybe you head out to California early, to check out the campus. I don't care, but you leave town. If I see you around after the end of the week, you're a dead man. Do you understand me?" Rob looked at me, and I knew he believed every word I said. "Yes, I do." I thought about the fact that I did not want to pay my wife alimony or excessive child support, so I decided one more instruction was necessary to protect her job. "One last thing, lover boy. I don't want you saying a word to anyone about your sordid little affair with my wife. If I find out you told even one person what you and she did, or about this morning, I'll put a bullet in your brain. Do you understand?" "I understand. I haven't said anything about this to anyone, and I never will. I promise." I stared at him long and hard. Finally, I replaced the pistol into my pocket and said, "I believe you, Rob. That's the only reason you're still alive. That, and it's obvious to me that you're just a weak, stupid kid. Don't make me regret this, Mercy." He shook his head frantically. "Your butt is gonna be sore as hell for a few days, but there's no real harm done. I shot you with salt. When you get home, take a shower and wash it gently. Maybe put on a dressing. You don't need to go to the doctor or anything. The scabbing should be gone in a week or two. If anyone asks, you fell off your bicycle. Got it? Good. Now, get dressed and get out." The young a-hole got dressed and left the house. I closed the door after him. I went back to the bedroom, where my wife was still cowering with tears on her face. I said, "Go take a shower." She went to the bathroom moaning and crying. I went to the kitchen and poured a full glass of cold milk. I always preferred milk. It had a calming effect on me. I chuckled wryly a little and I drank it. My wife finished her shower. I could hear her in the bedroom crying. She started when I spoke to her. Get dressed and wait for me here. I'll be back within an hour. We've got some talking to do. Grant, Just shut up, Clara. We can talk when I get back. Just wait here for me. I threw the bag with the shotgun and pistol into my car and drove them back to my parents' house. My dad met me there. He looked at me with a question in his eye. Yeah, it went like we planned. She was there with him, humping away like a couple of rabbits. Just dump the guns, Dad. I don't think either is going to squeal, but it would be best if the guns disappeared. He nodded, and I returned home. There were no police, and that was a good sign. My wife was in the bedroom cleaning the mess from the carpet. I gazed at her. At 36, she was still a beautiful woman. I sighed, and she turned, a look of profound sadness on her face. I felt drained. Much of my hate and rage had been dissipated by my earlier encounter. Putting a couple of shells worth of salt into a pair of cheating a-holes will do that for you, Grant? I'm sorry. I really am. I won't lie to you. This wasn't our only time, but it was going to be our last time. Just stop, Clara, I said wearily. Please, Grant. Just let me tell you, I've never done anything like this before. I didn't plan it. Well, I didn't go looking for it, at least. I don't love him. He was so special to me, and we got so close, and look, there's no excuse, but no, there's no excuse, Clara. But there are consequences. Please, Grant. I know I did wrong, but I wasn't thinking straight. He had such a crush on me, it felt good to my ego. I thought I was giving him a gift. He was a virgin, and you decided to be his teacher in the bedroom, too. I get it, Clara. You wanted a little change, and this kid was your opportunity. No, Grant. It wasn't like that. It wasn't that I wanted something you weren't giving me. He wasn't anywhere near as good in bed as you. He's just a kid. For God's sake. Yes, he is. About that, how stupid are you, Clara? You don't think a kid is going to talk to his friends about nailing his hot math teacher? And you are hot, Clara. You don't think this sort of thing is going to get around? Even if it never gets past the rumor stage, you don't think word of this is going to slip out? Didn't you think how this sort of thing could hurt you, your career, your marriage, our kids, for Christ's sake? Rob wouldn't tell anyone. Bullshit, Clara. The little a-hole would have let it slip out. Maybe not today, maybe not this summer. But at some point, when he was back in town over Thanksgiving break maybe, he would be hanging out with his friends, having had a few too many beers, and he would have said something. Just let a few details slip. And that's all it takes, Clara. Well, that, and you whoring around on me in the first place. Please, Grant. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I don't blame you. But please, you have to see that I love you very much. This was just a situation that got out of hand. It was an ego trip disguised as good intentions. I promise you, I have never done it before, and I would never do it again. Well, I'm certainly glad you weren't planning on making your glory hole an annual award for your best math student. Look, Clara, you haven't asked me yet, but I know what's been going on. I'm moving into the guest room for a while. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet, but I want you to just give me some space and leave me alone till I figure it out. Got it? Yes, Grant. I understand. The kids came home a couple of days later. Clara and I tried to act normally around them. The kids were excited to tell us about their time at camp, then became so busy with their friends and other activities that I don't think they noticed anything unusual between Clara and I. I could see that Clara was putting on a brave front, though she was a nervous wreck. To her credit, she left me alone for several days. I took mercy on her. Clara, could we talk? I asked her one night, after the kids had gone to bed. Yes, of course, Grant. Her eyes held a look of apprehension. I've decided that we need to divorce. Oh no, she wailed, but quietly, so as not to disturb the children. I was impressed by her self-control. Yes, Clara. I was going to have you served with divorce papers tomorrow. Well, I still am, but I didn't want it to come as a complete shock. I wouldn't say I owe you this, after what you did, but I wanted to tell you face to face. Clara understood, but she asked the mandatory question in such situations. Please, Grant. Isn't there any hope for reconciliation? I love you. I screwed up. I don't understand it myself. Exactly. Rob was never a threat to us. Oh God. Please, Grant. Please. She pleaded with tears streaming down her face. No, Clara, there is not. This was not a one-time drunken sex. That I could forgive. No, what you did was to premeditatively decide to become the sex teacher to a virgin young a-hole for weeks. I don't know why exactly, and I don't care. You did it intentionally. The woman I married would not have done that, would not have risked our marriage and our family to satisfy some curiosity, or to take pity, or to satisfy her ego, or whatever. No, you changed, Clara, and now I've changed. You broke your vows, and now I am free of this marriage. And I don't believe in open marriages, Clara. It might work for some, but it would never work for me. To get the freedom from this marriage that I need, I have to divorce you. My mind is made up. And then the sobbing came. She was disconsolate, racked with sobs, choking on her own pain. I felt some compassion for her, but I had given this thought. I was unmoved in my resolve, but I was, almost despite myself, moved by her pain. At last, she regained some of her composure. To her credit, she didn't drag out her pleas. I couldn't tell if she had truly accepted my decision. I wasn't sure how she would respond once the wheels were in motion, but at least she was rational again. I understand, Grant. You are going to divorce me, and our marriage is over. What's going to happen? You'll be served tomorrow with the papers. As angry as I am, as angry as I was, I don't hate you so much anymore, and I don't want to destroy you totally. We still have our children. We will have their interests to bind us together in their future. Yes, we will still have them. Won't we, Grant? She managed a small, sad smile and risked a hopeful gaze into my eyes. I'm not sure what she was looking for, but she didn't find it. The smile disappeared and she looked down at her hands again. You should look for a lawyer, Clara, and have him review my divorce petition. But I recommend you accept the divorce conditions. They're fair, and I don't want to fight about them. I've suggested 50-50 legal custody of our children with you as primary physical custodian here at this house, with me getting unlimited visitation and physical custody every other weekend, and for me to get them for a month in the summer. You work less than I do, and you've always been a good mother to them, so it's only right that they stay here with you. I've provided for you to get the standard child support based on our incomes, but there will be no alimony. You get half our liquid assets, and I get half. I keep my retirement accounts, and you keep yours and your pension. And once the kids are grown, we will sell the house and split the proceeds 50-50, but I get back the down payment, plus interest. I understood. I will accept those divorce conditions. Will you tell our children why we have divorced? I won't tell them until Sophie graduates from high school, if ever. And I won't show them the video of you and Rob. I promise you that much. You have a video? Yep. And voice recordings, too. I have all the evidence I need to burn you down to the ground. A look of fear crossed her face, then. Don't worry, Clara. I was prepared to use them if I needed to, as leverage. But you've been cooperative. Stay cooperative, and I promise they will never see the light of day. Tomorrow, we can tell the kids that we're getting a divorce. I'll be moving in with my parents the next day. She made one last attempt. Grant, it will be difficult to live without you. You have been my only love. Please. Her voice was weak and soft, like a child's whisper. I steeled myself. I am sorry, Clara. After I move out, if you need something with the house or with the kids, well, you have my number. But as for anything else, my mind is made up. That's the way it is. Clara began crying again. I was difficult telling the kids that we were going to divorce. We didn't say anything about Clara's romps with Rob, and the kids were mystified. They cried, and we promised them that it wasn't their fault, but that there was no chance of us getting back together. I moved out the next day and into the next chapter of my life. My parents were saddened by our divorce, but they were glad when their grandchild spent the weekends with us every second time. Time by time, everybody became used to it. I didn't date much. I worked a lot, saw my kids as much as I could, and really didn't dedicate much time to women. After a year or so, I began to get very lonely. I tried internet dating and such, but none of the women I met appealed to me. It seemed every woman I had any interest in was either hard and jaded by men, or was a woman of loose morals. The latter category made for a few fun dates, but I was interested in something serious and long-term. On a lark, I investigated international dating websites. I had always had an interest in Buddhism and found myself on a website dedicated to dating Laotian women. That's where I met her. Her name was Nina Fuang. She was beautiful, she was young, only 23, and she was smart. She was a university graduate who had a good education from a Laotian high school. Her father was a surgeon, her mother a nurse. She was interested in finding an American man. I started chatting with her, and we got along great. She was fluent in English. Did I mention she was beautiful? She was tall for a Laotian gal, 5 feet 3 inches, with long black hair, dark eyes and light, honey brown skin. I was drawn to her. I told her I was recently divorced and had 2 teenage kids. At first I thought this news would be difficult to her, but she only wanted to know the circumstances of my divorce. I told her the truth, and she told me that she would never cheat on me. After a few months of correspondence and video chat, We planned for me to go to Laos to meet her. I used my secret money fund for the trip. It had come in handy, after all. I traveled to Vientiane, where Nina worked, via Bangkok, and Nina and her parents met me at the airport and escorted me to my hotel. Nina was living with her parents. Nina looked better in life than on video, and she smiled with her whole being when we first saw each other in person. I fell in love with her at first sight. We had lunch or dinner with her family several times during my 3-week stay. We went sightseeing with her parents. I went out with Nina alone, too, but the family was obviously a very important part of her life. Once I was with Nina and her friend in a restaurant. She was a teacher like Nina, and she told me, when Nina went to the toilet, that Nina had a fiancé who died in a job accident 1 week before their wedding. She said that Nina was depressed for months after that, and finally emerged from that state. Some months later, Nina was still not dating, so her friend suggested that she try a dating website. She had been on it for several months, with no real interest in anyone, until she met me. She observed that I was like medicine to her, that she had really come alive again when we started corresponding. She admonished me not to break Nina's heart. I knew that Nina had been engaged before, and that her fiancé had died, but I didn't know about her depression and the rest of the story. I was touched. Before I departed, I knew what I had to do. Very simply, I asked her if she wanted to be my wife, and she told me yes. I gave her an engagement ring. She knew the Western custom, and she was glad for the ring. We kissed and hugged and professed our love to each other. I departed, and we made our plans for the wedding across the ocean. 6 months later, my children and I traveled to Vientiane. The wedding was a big event with Buddhist monks present, and it took place over several days. After wedding, I came home with my new bride. I learned later that my kids told Clara that I had married a girl from Laos. Sophie and Keith told me she cried a lot, and she was very sad for weeks. Lovemaking with Nina was amazing. We gave ourselves to each other completely. We both knew what it was to have loved and lost, and we didn't waste any time or energy on anything but expressing our love to each other. The months rolled on. By the time of my company's Christmas party, my bride was 5 months pregnant, and she was still a stunningly beautiful woman. She was dressed in a holiday dress that showed off her legs and her increasingly swollen bust, but, mostly, hid her rapidly swelling belly. And her husband Jim congratulated us at the company party. Our first daughter's name was Nancy, named after my mother. 1 year later, we had another beautiful daughter, whom we named Tara. Nina communicated with her family and her friend on Skype. My grandmother died, and she left me some money. After discussing it with Nina, we decided to move into my old home so as to have room for our growing family. Clara accepted my buyout offer. Sophie was almost done with high school by then and wanted to live with us until her graduation. Clara was frankly relieved, as she and Sophie had not gotten on very well since the divorce. Clara had confessed to her a couple years before that the reason for the divorce was that she had cheated on me. Sophie called her a 304 and didn't speak to her for months. Eventually, normalcy returned, but Sophie was forever rather cool towards Clara after that. For his part, when Keith found out the circumstances of our divorce, he was angry at her, but acknowledged that she was his mother and forgave her more quickly. In any event, I bought out Clara and she bought a nice condo for herself. Keith and I assisted Clara in moving to the condo, and she thanked me. Sophie went to the grandparents instead of assisting her mother. I no longer had any hate in my heart for Clara. I was simply neutral towards her. My heart was filled with love for Nina and my 4 children. I would have liked Sophie to have fully forgiven her mother, but it wasn't my place to put pressure on her. I did tell her that her mother loved her and had been a good mother to her, and that both of them would be happier if she could someday forgive her. My love for Nina grew, as did hers for me. Sophie moved out, on to college, and my little ones grew. The years went on. My eldest children graduated from college and got jobs locally. My little ones grew fast. I didn't keep up too much with Clara, but I know she dated some, but never got too serious. At one point, she seemed to be getting serious with a guy, and he moved into her condo. It turned out that this man was an abuser. He kicked my ex-wife down the stairs, breaking her leg and arm. The man was arrested, and Clara was hospitalized. Keith visited his mother, and he telephoned me. He told me Clara cried all day because her daughter did not visit her. I told Nina what Keith had told me. Nina was angry. She visited Sophie and told her that she had to go to see her mother. Confronted with her behavior and her duty to her mother, Sophie broke down and cried. Nina held her and soothed her and told her that it was time to make peace with Clara. I took Sophie to the hospital. We arrived at her ward. When she saw us, she began to cry from pleasure. She thanked me for bringing our daughter. Sophie and Clara wept and forgave each other. I left the room. Later, I returned and Sophie went to the bathroom. Clara asked if I could forgive her. I told her I could and I did. She cried a lot again, but those tears were tears of relief and happiness. I told her that I hoped for her future happiness and that I had found mine with Nina and my children. My daughter returned to the room and promised she would visit her again soon. About a year later, my daughter was getting married. The wedding was a huge event. Our 2 young daughters were very excited because they were the flower girls. I walked Sophie down the aisle to her fiancé. Keith walked his mother and Nina to their seats. Clara and I were polite with one another, but I tried to avoid her without being obvious about it. I had forgiven her, but I just could never totally forget her betrayal. She talked much with Nina, however. Nina told me later Clara was very friendly with her. At one point, late in the evening, as the party was winding down, long after my youngest daughters had been taken away by the babysitters, Clara approached me as I sat at a table with Nina and my old neighbor, Diane. Disregarding propriety, she told me in a sad voice, "Grant, I can see how much you and Nina love each other. It makes me sad for what we will never have again, all because of a stupid mistake on my part. You look so good, so young, so alive and vibrant, and I'm just an aging, lonely woman now." Taken aback, I had an inspiration. "Clara, I guess I'm living proof that, after you've been cheated on, that different gyms do train the body better." Diane reddened. Clara just looked at me confused, and Nina, to whom I had told the story of Diane's attempted seduction of me so many years before, jumped up into my lap, hugging me tight and kissing me. "That is true, my love, but don't look for any other gyms than mine for the rest of your life," Nina said, and I didn't. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.